That's not looking like the typical Florida yard right there. Bro, I think this place got a paint job since I was here last.
It looks good.
Whoa, Mom got some fresh mulch. Looking good. All right, guys, we got an exciting front yard dinner. Rob has invited me and Matt over for some dinner out of the garden. Everything, obviously, right from the yard. We're gonna kind of film the entire harvest process, cooking process, so hold tight. Are you ready?
Yeah, dude, I'm ready.
Well, what are you doing here? What are we gonna eat?
It's been a long day. I don't know. We're gonna see what he's got for us.
We're eating something fresh from the yard over here. Everything's from the yard, so I think Rob's got something up his sleeve for a pretty epic dinner here tonight. Me and Matt are here to, we're gonna help prepare. We're gonna make Matt do some work. I'm just gonna be filming. Hold tight.
Welcome to the garden. You ready for dinner?
Oh, I'm ready. What's cooking?
All right. Today we're gonna have yucca, pigeon pea, and greens in collard wraps. First, I'll take you over to the yucca tree. I don't think they call them trees, but this one's a big one. So I planted these probably about a year ago, so we'll see. They could be a little woody, but there should be definitely some good parts. And they don't all get this big. You've got back here, this is, you know, a smaller one, for example. This gets less sunlight, I'm sure. And this is about as big as the trees get. They're actually easier to harvest than you might think. You don't have to dig them up. Ooh, dang.
Holy smokes!
Oh, just that chunk alone.
Hey, so are you doing like cassava curls? I mean, how do you get all those muscles, bro?
Just eating and gardening and riding my bike. Looks good. It doesn't look woody.
It actually looks soft.
It's pretty easy. Like, I'll show you. Basically, you just take a nice chunk of the plant. You would want to cut it to have cleaner sections. And then if I'm going to replant this, you know, ideally you don't plant things in the same spot over and over. You pick a new spot of the yard. But it's literally you stick it in the ground and that's going to be a new cassava plant. You can do it, you know, some people do it like this and they'll shoot up. Some people do it straight in. Some people do it at a 45-degree angle. And all of these nodes, each of these nodes will have either, if it's underground, it'll have roots coming out of it, and if it's above ground, it'll have leaves growing out of it. So, you know, this is one of the easiest foods to grow huge amounts of in Central Florida. It's drought tolerant. It really doesn't have pest problems, and it's not the most nutrient dense plant, but I don't need my nutrients to come from my cassava because they come from my greens and things like that. This is the calories. Usually calories aren't super nutrient dense. That's not the purpose. These are what fill you up and give you that energy, and the nutrients will come from the other things in the garden. So cassava is going to be the base of our meal. And then the other big one is the pigeon peas. And this is another super important, easy to grow crop, you know, for beginners that don't really know how to garden. Cassava and pigeon peas, two of the easiest ones. Again, I don't really know of any pests, and I planted this about a little over a year ago, and I've already gotten 3 crops out of it probably. And what I do is I wait, you can hear this tree shaking a little bit. Now this I've already harvested, there's only a little bit left. But what I do is I wait for almost the whole tree to be shaking like this. So, and then rather than having to pick one off at a time, that's time consuming. Instead, what I do is I just wait for almost all of them to be brown and then I strip just like that. And that way I can get that many in a handful. So that saves me a lot of energy, and I wait until I can grab it, and all I have to do is squeeze it and it basically pops. And you can eat them fresh, but I like to eat them dry because then I can store them. And so literally just with the two hands on the crease, and if it pops open, that could have popped a little more. Like it literally can actually pop, and that's not quite popping. So this could be a little drier. But that's how I harvest pigeon peas, and I already have pigeon peas soaking because it's nice to soak them for, you know, up to a day or even 2 days, depending, to make cooking time faster. So I'm not gonna harvest this right now because I already have it harvested, but you can see it's putting out nice flowers here, so this will have another crop. I've got a few pigeon pea trees around the yard and a few around the neighborhood. Over here is Amaranth, which we won't use as the grain. For tonight, we're not gonna have this grain. I'm working on harvesting this grain and actually having a meal that way, but what we will harvest is some of the greens. So I like to harvest the nice, fresh, young greens. And I mean, we call them greens, but they're not green, they're pretty purple. So this is a red amaranth, and I'm just gonna harvest the young, tender leaves. And this meal that we're making tonight is almost 100% from this front yard garden. The cassava, the pigeon peas, most of the greens, but there's also gonna be some herbs that maybe, for example, my salt will have come from the ocean. Some of my herbs could come from some of my other gardens. Some of them might have come from foraging as well. I'm not exactly sure of the concoction we're gonna make yet. I know the base, but I always kind of figure things out as I go. I have no recipes. I've never written a recipe in my entire life, and I've used very few recipes. So definitely gonna figure out the meal as we go, and yeah, I've got a good idea. I've done it plenty of times, but we'll see what comes together. And these amaranth that I'm harvesting right now, all I did was take seed. You can see the brown on there. When it's brown, that's ready. So I'd wait till a lot longer, but all I did was take seed from another garden where I had grown this, and I just scattered it. And you can see it growing everywhere. This is another survival crop. It's a self-seeding annual that probably once you've got it, it's probably hard to get rid of, which is a good thing because it's greens and it's the grain as well. So it's a really good, you know, in a lot of places it grows as a weed all over the United States, and it's a really good weed to have around.
Pretty weed.
It's a beautiful, and that's the thing, you can also make bouquets with this. A lot of people use it as a decoration. So this is an extremely multi-purposed plant. And I'm sure there's things I'm missing beyond that of what you can do with it. So I have an abundance of this right now. This is the New Zealand spinach, so we'll saute some of this up. And yeah, I mean, for a lot of new gardeners, I think one thing that a lot of people, they always feel bad. Some people feel bad picking from their plants, like they're killing it. And so like they have this feeling of scarcity. But what I'm doing right now is actually gonna make me more food. By picking here, what this is gonna do is it's gonna actually, when it grows back, it's gonna branch out. So I'm literally creating food by eating my food. And when you deal with perennials, you know, that's the way it is a lot of the time. So it's about, you know, a mindset of abundance rather than a mindset of scarcity. And, you know, if you get good at gardening, you don't even have to be that good to all of a sudden be living a life of some serious abundance. It's the most abundant way that I've found to live. Cabbage, but they've been the cabbage heads of life and just putting out these great leaves and just huge, and they make a great wrap. So these are what we're going to use for our wraps. I'll use some of these cabbage, and I'll use some of the collards. I definitely like to throw some medicine into all my meals. This is Plantago. There's many different varieties of it, but you can chew this up and use it as a poultice. If I get stung by a bee, I put it on there and it drastically prevents swelling. But you can eat it as well, and I juice it and I throw it in meals. It's got a nice flavor, and yeah, I always like to add some medicine to every meal. whole bunch of the African blue basil. I use this in a lot of meals. I mean, this is one of these plants that just comes back forever. And you can see all the bees. Like I said, I don't have recipes or any actual plan when I start most of my meals. I usually just have a huge number of herbs. Today's day 171 of growing and foraging all my food. So, and all my gardens are young, but I see my friends who have this and they have just giant, you know, it expands, and the more years you do this stuff, the more solid you get. Yeah, I mean, it becomes easier over time. I'm still in the beginner stage. I don't even know the proper way to harvest this stuff. I mean, I can assume you pull the outer leaves like most anything, but so much to know. Here are the pigeon peas. I've had these soaking for about 18 hours or so they swell up, which is, you know, and then it just drastically reduces cooking time. Here's some stuff from the garden, the last of my beets, and then well, actually I still have a whole bunch of carrots to pull up. I pulled up 40 carrots. These are the reject ones that I put here to eat right away. But I pulled up 40 pounds of carrots a couple days ago, and that's only a fraction of them, so. I did take some of your suggestions on YouTube. I threw a few pigeon peas in there, but only a few. I really half did it. But anyway, salt from the ocean. And then I've just got so many things here that I've dried, mostly from the garden. What to do? Well, definitely some red peppers. Probably throw in a few of those. I'll throw some dried green onion in there. A few cloves of garlic. This is what I try to do. I do a lot of meal prep. So this is Seminole pumpkin, carrot, sweet potato soup with herbs in there. And that way, you know, when I'm in a hurry, I can just grab meals on the go. Or when I don't feel like making a meal. This is my overflow region, stuff that I'm working on processing. So I've got some onions here from the garden, so I'll grab an onion, some garlic. Still harvesting garlic. But here's you can see that this, I think, was already starting to sprout. I left it in the ground too long. Oh, you know, I'll grab some of this fresh cilantro to put on top. Some garlic scapes. Those have got some major flavor. Garlic scapes. All right, that'll do for now. We've got cassava or yucca. We've got pigeon peas. This makes up the calories. This makes up the protein for the meal. And then throwing in some carrots and some celery. And then, of course, the base, the wraps, is going to be the collard greens, or as Matt calls them, the cabbage collards. And then I'm going to saute up a whole bunch of greens. There's two different types of kale, Swiss chard, New Zealand spinach, amaranth, and then some medicine. This is the plantain or plantago. And for herbs, I've got garlic chives, African blue basil, rosemary, and then I've got a few dried herbs. So this is almost 100% from this garden. We've got some herbs from my other garden, and then some salt from the ocean. Otherwise, so this is slightly foraged, like maybe 1% foraged and 99% from 2 gardens, and almost like 95% of it's from this one front yard garden. So a complete meal from the garden. So I cut it in half, and then you peel it. And this is a very unique peel. It's not like potatoes or anything like that in the way the peel is. The peel on a ideal yucca, the peel just literally kind of peels right off. So I get my thumb in there, and this cassava is doing well. When things are going well, it just comes right off. There we go.
Boom.
So there's the root. So this is all we're gonna cook tonight. There's no need to cook this whole thing. I'll cook this tomorrow, or I'm actually hopefully gonna turn it into flour for the first time. I haven't had flour or bread for at least 171 days, so that'll be awesome. So this is good cassava that I'm feeling here. Cutting right through. There's a lot of times there's a woody center, but it's not looking very woody. There's not even really a core. So sometimes when cassava gets really old, it gets really woody, but also I've harvested cassava that's pretty old and it's not, and I've harvested cassava that was young that was woody. So I haven't found exact rhyme or reasons to things. So I've got boiling water. I try to boil that ahead time, and then I just put the cassava into the boiling water. And they say you have to boil it for a minimum of 15 minutes. Cassava has cyanide in it. So it is a toxic plant. You absolutely cannot eat this raw. The leaves or the root cannot be eaten raw. But cooking it for 15 minutes or so, it destroys the cyanide compound. I think it's hydrogen cyanide, I think. And different cyanide plants have different levels of different cassava has different levels of that. Typically here in the United States, we only grow the varieties that are lower in that. Whereas I've read in Africa, they have the varieties that have a lot of it, and that has to be fermented. This doesn't have to be fermented, but it's a good thing to ferment it. I believe the nutrients are more readily available if you do. Boiling it in salt water, changes it completely. It's so much more tasty to boil it in salt water. I always do lots of ingredients, and my former partner Cheryl, she was such a big fan of like less ingredients, the simplicity of just a few ingredients, and that's an art that I just have not mastered, but it can be amazing. But I'm always just loading it up. I'm trying to make it as nutritious and nutritious as possible. We've got the pigeon peas going into the pot. Those have been soaking for close to 24 hours. And then throwing in the other ingredients, we've got celery, red peppers. Those are kind of mild, not super hot. Carrots, the garlic chives, some green onion went in there, garlic, rosemary, and African blue basil, and sea salt as well. So that's what's going into the pigeon peas. Well, cassava is beyond ready, so I'm going to take that off. And I only have 2 burners, so it makes cooking a little hard sometimes if I'm doing something like this. But here's the greens. Also, you'll see that I don't have the biggest pan, so sometimes that's a little overloaded. And I'm just going to use some of this cassava water to saute the greens in. No oil in this meal. Not so much by choice, but just because I haven't been successful in making coconut oil yet. Otherwise we'd be using oil. Hopefully in one of the future videos you will see us cooking with oil and I'll be basking in it, but not yet.
Alright.
So we are gonna grab sauerkraut, one of the most important ingredients for this meal.
Whoa, is this the Florida root cellar? What do you got going on?
And yeah, this is in my
Whoa!
little makeshift root cellar here where I put my ferments to keep them cooler. It's not super cool in here, but it's way cooler than in my house that doesn't have air conditioning or climate control. Today we'll go with this one. This is cabbage and beet with garlic, dill, and onion. And that makes the perfect garnish. There are the greens. They are done, just lightly sauteed, and then the pigeon peas. Dinner is served. So, we've got a little system here. I'll show you. This is a pretty typical meal for me. I make these a lot, collard wraps with whatever it might be on it. So there's the cassava, or the yucca. Throw some of that on there. Then I do a little bit of fresh greens. Just a bit of fresh greens. Then my sauteed greens. And then the pigeon peas. And one of the most important things is the sauerkraut, or whatever it is that I'm fermenting at the time. Nice, beautiful beet and cabbage sauerkraut. And then I've also got some green onion, raw, to garnish it with, and some basil. And that right there is a yucca pigeon pea wrap.
Wow.
So I'm gonna make one for each of us. And as you can see, there's a lot of food here, so I made enough to make 10 or 15 of these wraps. Typically I'll make quite a few meals at once in the ideal scenario. Makes really this whole project just a lot more manageable to just be able to freeze this and have more meals. Key with the wraps is ideally not having too much water in there, because then they drip on you. That's a fat wrap too. That's also something I have a hard time with, is not making my wraps too fat. We don't have 3 plates here. I've got bowls though.
Whoa!
Serving bowls, typically. And
Bon appetit.
let's sit down and eat.
Alright.
Oh boy, that's a needed seat.
Alright, what are you thinking here?
It's good, man.
It's ripening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you rotated that with one other major staple, be there.
Wow.
Sauerkraut makes it. Rob was nice enough to share this. Awesome, bro.
Thanks for joining us all for dinner. It's been a lovely experience, and if this video does well and you all really like this, then Pete and I are planning on doing a whole series of cooking here in my outdoor kitchen of all the different foods that I grow and forage. So let us know if you do like this in the comments and what food you want to see us cooking and eating, and we'll try to do that for y'all. So thanks for being here, and see y'all next time.
So I hope you all enjoyed this little cooking video with Rob Greenfield, and you heard Rob. If you guys enjoyed this, you want to see more of this, I think it would be epic to put a cooking series together with, you know, plants, perennial vegetables, foods that we grow down here in Florida that I talk about in these landscapes all the time. It's like, it's the finishing step, you know. We see how to grow them, we see what they look like, now you see how to cook them, and you can kind of see a little result of what the finished product can be. So let us know down below if you want these to keep coming. Don't forget, if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Be sure to pound that bell to stay notified, and most importantly, pound dirt.